And freely translated, the name of this magazine is something like this: The Way We Do Music. And the big headliner of this issue of May 1988 is, of course, the interview with a-ha, rehearsing for their Stay on These Roads tour, where they practice in London, etc. We'll get back to that when we browse through the magazine. If anyone remembers the Norwegian rock group Stage Dolls to the left there, please say so in the comment section. I'd love to hear if they were popular outside Norway at the time. Very melodic sounding rock band, by the way. I liked them a lot. And looking back now, I can see that many of the article writers in these magazines from the late 80s went on to bigger and bolder things in the music industry later on. So I'm sure it's like that in other countries as well. So let's see what else we have here. And of course, back in the day, the Frankfurt Messe was a big thing. And this issue covers the Frankfurt Messe of 1988. And many vintage classics now were presented back then. Among them, the Akai MPC-60, which the journalist doesn't think very highly of, but also the Akai S1000, which were very new at the time. And I read this very carefully as I wanted one and needed a sampler like that back in the day. The long-forgotten Akai A-Dam 12-inch digital tape recording system was also presented here. Alesis had come out with their MMT8 sequencers and the Microverb 2 and some other stuff as well, which I bought. And Casio is riding high on their VZ synths and FZ synths as well. And they're also releasing their PG380 guitar synth setup here at Frankfurt Messe in 1988. Casio had a lot of stuff at the time, both fun stuff and professional stuff. And here's an ad for the AMS Audiophile, a very expensive hard disk audio system. Did anyone actually use it? Please say so in the comment section. Korg were being owned by Yamaha at the time, but they had their 707 out. I see that pic here. And EMU was riding high on their Emulator 3 release, of course. Oberheim is releasing their Matrix 1000 module. And on the right side here, the left column, you can see something about the Korg M1, and I don't think the journalist knows at the time that the M1 will go on to be a huge success for Korg. He's more occupied with the Tascam. You see there, their 8-track tape machine, which were groundbreaking at the time, being able to have 8 tracks on regular cassette tapes. That was big in 1988, and I actually lusted after one of these myself, but I never got one. So let's turn over the page here, and I'm pretty sure Roland, yes, they were riding high with their D50 from the year before, and now came all the cheaper alternatives to the D50, the D110, which I bought, the D10, then D20, etc., and their S330 sampler and all kinds of stuff, the R880 reverb machine, anyone remember those? And of course, Yamaha, at this point, they've decided to take on the sampler market with their TX16W, the sampler from hell. So a lot of stuff happening in this Frankfurt Messe in 1988. I'm pretty sure 1988 was a exciting year for guitarists as well, but I will blissfully just browse through the guitar section in this issue and move straight on. You see an ad for the Boss RV2 digital reverb pedal. Everything was digital in 1988, of course. But here's an analog mixer from Roland. And to the upper right here, you can see an ad for the ADAP system for the Atari ST. Anyone remember that? And you also have a little ad here from a Norwegian music shop advertising for the new Ensoniq keyboards and synths. I think we'll get back to these later in the same issue here. Of course, being a Norwegian music magazine, there's a lot of ads from Norwegian music stores advertising for their new inventory, etc. All the new stuff, among them shown in the Frankfurt Messe. A little ad here or a reminder to pay your subscription for the magazine, which I did. And here's another music group I really recommend you to check out, Coco. They made highly glossy synth pop tracks. And the frontman, or not the frontman, but the man behind the scenes here, Chris Higgins, he had a lot of stuff going in his studio, which were inside a container of all things. And he used a Juno 106, the Akai S900, some high-end reverb machines, and a 16-tape mixing system. And he made music that really didn't owe anything to anything on the charts. Actually, it sounded very glossy, very modern, and very high-tech. So definitely to check out Coco from Norway from the time. Their songs Take Me to Jamaica and Life Must Go On. Very, very nice stuff. And he also sampled vocals into the S900 and stuff like that. So again, check out Coco. And ads for Ensoniq, the ESQ1, the SQ80, and the EPS, of course. Ensoniq had a lot of good stuff going at the time. And I tried and used a lot of it in music stores and studios at the time. I never got any of those machines myself at the time. But I had a lot of friends that really invested in Ensoniq gear at the time. Supersonic Music in Norway, a music store in Oslo, very big, and I bought some stuff there. MIDI mouse for storing synth programs, etc. Soft synth, digital synthesis on the Macintosh and Atari. And that guy to the right here, he's a service technician that's still going at it. I thought he looked old back then. I can see now that he's probably in his 40s on that picture. Just a wild guess. So you can do the math yourself. But he's still doing stuff as a technician. And here's, of course, the main thing in this issue, the interview with a-ha. a-ha stays on these roads, a little wordplay here, with their song title and album title to be. At this point, they haven't thought up a title yet, and they actually ask the journalist what he thinks should be the title, and he suggests Out of Blue Comes Green, which we all know wasn't the chosen title later. But then he asks the guys if they're only using synclaviers or fairlights when recording their new album. And they say, no, we don't use expensive synth systems like that at all. And Mag says that they're using the Akai S900 for drums on the album, in addition to live drums. And many of the drum sounds they've been given by Akai themselves, he says. And they're using the Juno 60, which he thinks is one of the most wonderful synths ever. And he confirms that the synth riff on Take On Me is done on the Juno 60. And they're using the Passport software on the Macintosh for sequencing. They're also recording a lot live onto tape, he says. And there were talks about doing something with Giorgio Moroder, which they turned down because he was thinking too commercial for them, they say. Here's a pic from the rehearsals, and you can see the Yamaha DX7 and twice of those and some Roland at the top there, maybe a GX. And Mags is using a DX7 and the 106 from Roland. Here's the Alesis MMT8 and the HR16 drum machine. I had both of those, and I still do. Lovely. I remember back then buying this issue that I thought the interview was cut short, and I really wanted some more technical, in-depth details about the album there. The Step DG1 electronic guitar, synth guitar. Anyone remember that or use that? Please say so in the comment section. I've never seen one. So let's see what else here. Some Sony stuff to the left there. And of course, a review of the Korg DSM-1, a real sampling disaster for Korg, and they quit the sampling business after that for many decades. And it was quite misunderstood back in the day, still is. But it had 16 individual outputs, so it was a perfect slave for a sequencer driving drums, and that's really its main asset, or was it main asset back in the day, being driven by sequencers for doing drums, because it lacked a lot of the synthesis features of the DSS-1. A much more in-depth technical interview with Saga here, where you can see Michael Crichton playing the D50 bass, synth bass from the D50, and his brother Ian Crichton doing guitar stuff, and he also has some synth guitar stuff going where he triggers a Korg EX8000, it seems, and he's using a Yamaha Rev 7 reverb unit here in that rack there. So this interview is actually quite detailed, and that's what the a-ha interview should have been as well, in my opinion. And the setlist here, yes, it's the Rev 7 and the EX8000 synth from Korg. So what else? The Soundtracks mixers, anyone remember those? Ultimate keyboard stands, the brand Ultimate, always looked so cool, very 80s, and with those rack units up there to the left. I always thought they looked so cool. One thing this magazine always had a focus on was music studios scattered around locally in Norway. They always had some emphasis on how to run a studio and behind the scenes of studios, small studios, big studios, etc., to show people that it was possible to make a living from running a music studio back in the late 80s. Very difficult today, of course, but back then you had lots of work, music groups, etc., having a record deal, went into the studio. And one of those studios, the prior one was a kind of low-key, cheaper one. This is a very high-end studio for the time in Oslo, where they actually used that AMS data filer, which we saw previously in the magazine, I think. Very high-end and very expensive studio to book at the time. And more articles, like in the keyboard magazines, you had articles about digital sound and stuff like that, more technical stuff. I won't bore you by trying to translate all of this, but it's here it's about digital sound and some digital delays, etc., and how we could write programs in BASIC to do stuff like that. And of course, at the end of all music tech magazines at the time, you have ads from normal people trying to sell their stuff or buy stuff, etc., etc. And it's so much fun reading ads like this today, where you can really see what type of gear were popular at the time, how much they cost, etc., how much they demand for certain pieces of stuff like synths and samplers, etc., etc. And I see Yamaha drum machines, RX5 and QX1s for sale. We have the Roland DDR30, I see. And what else? Another Yamaha RX5. We have some S50, S550 sounds for sale. The Roland TR505. What else? We have a Yamaha DX21 going for $650. This is in 1988. I see a Casio FC1 sampler here for sale. And I see a Roland S10 sampler going for close to 800 grand. A Roland MSQ100 sequencer for sale here. I see the Akai MG1212 tape machine going for 3,800 here. Anyone remember those? I do. And here's also a guy selling 2 TF1 modules for the TX816 rack from Yamaha. $380 for the pair. One guy selling a Akai S900 for $14,500, which is half price. The newest OS and a lot of floppies as well. The S900 was a very popular sampler at the time, and Akai had started to rule the world in terms of sampling, actually. The last pages in this magazine is mostly from professional music studios and video studios and artists, songwriters, etc., etc. Technicians. You could all put in your ads here to promote your services. And the last page is from Yamaha this time, the REX50 digital multi-effector. Today this has a cult status actually, and I never used one myself back in the day. I don't think I've ever used one at all actually, so well, that's about it. Musikkpraksis from Norway, issue May 1988. I hope you like this little glimpse into this magazine. I'm Espen Kraft, I am the 80s. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!